This is Keith Helwig from Cops Corrections Videos. I'd like to discuss today what I would expect from a new officer their first day on the job. Now, I'm going to come at this from different perspectives. I'm going to come at it from the perspective of someone who worked as a line officer for almost 18 years and someone who was a line lieutenant and a line captain for almost the same amount of time. When new officers come out of the academy, when I was a blue shirt, when I worked on the line, I expected that officer to know the policies and procedures. I expected them to know the 303, which is the Wisconsin guidebook for inmates. Now, I didn't expect them to know how to deal with inmates, how to handle inmates. I knew that, like every officer that comes out of the academy, they're going to be anxious. They're going to want to get that first bust. They're going to want to write that first conduct report. But they're also going to be scared. Any officer who tells you that the first time they work by themselves or even work OJT that they aren't scared and nervous, they're really not telling you the truth. Because I can remember my first day, and I can remember I was shakier than a beagle crapping a peach pit. So I'm going to expect that officer, as a blue shirt, if I'm his FTO, and I was FTO for a number of people, to listen to me. Now, I'm going to ask input. I'm going to ask them questions. Now, I'm not asking questions to trap them or to embarrass them or whatever. I'm asking them questions because I want to find out their level of knowledge. Now, I know they know the rules, the policies and procedures, things of that nature, probably better than I do as someone who is an old veteran because it was just pounded into them for the past 6 weeks. But now they're at the institution, they're on the line, and they have to learn how to practically apply those rules, how to practically apply the policies and procedures. I'm going to watch them, I'm going to help them, I'm going to guide them. Now, looking at it from a supervisor perspective, whenever I got a new class of recruits in, usually we'd start 6 or 7 at a time of new rookies starting. I'd always bring them into my office and I'd talk to them. And I let them know that I have an open door. I let them know that as their supervisor, I felt it was my job to help them succeed and not watch them fail. I also told them I expected them to do their job. To do that, as a new officer, one of the biggest things you have to do is listen to the officers you're working with. Now, some of them are good officers, some of them are bad officers. You're going to soon figure out which is which. Remember, you can learn as much from the bad officers as you can from the good officers. For example, a bad officer. A lot of people think that generating a lot of conduct reports or a lot of inmate write-ups, that shows you that you're doing your job. Looking at it from a supervisory perspective, I have a whole different view of it. The old adage I always use is if you can't run it, write it. If you're talking to the inmates, if you're communicating to inmates, if they know what to expect out of you, you're probably not going to end up writing a whole ton of conduct reports. I knew officers that thrived on writing conduct reports. They would write an inmate up for taking an extra spoonful of sugar at breakfast. They would write an inmate up for not having their bed made properly. You know, these are all things you can talk to inmates about. These are all things that you can mention to them, give them a written warning, whatever. Not everything deserves a conduct report. And that's something that needs to be driven through to new officers. Now, when you work with a bad officer, you're going to learn. You're going to learn what officers are bad. They're the ones that are always calling supervisors, asking for help. You know, I could always tell when an officer wasn't communicating with their staff. When I would go down there and they would ask me a question, and it would be the same thing that the sergeant told them, but they basically didn't believe the sergeant or didn't want to hear the sergeant because they just, for whatever reason, maybe didn't trust them. I don't know. There's a lot of good sergeants out there. I had one sergeant in particular, he and I are friends to this day. Ex-Marine, Vietnam vet, the whole works. He wrote probably 2 conduct reports a month. He had the cleanest inmate housing unit in the institution, bar none. Why? Because he could handle things on his own. He wasn't abusive. He never did anything physically abusive to the inmates, whatever. But he would come up with creative punishment. At that time, inmates were still allowed to smoke. We had an outside rec area behind each housing unit. And he would tell an inmate, okay, well, you didn't make your bed today. I'm going to give you a warning for not making your bed. And if you go out and give me 100 cigarette butts off the rec area, we'll call it even for the day. And guess what? Those inmates would go out there and they'd pick up those 100 cigarette butts and they'd make their bed from that point on. So as a new officer, sometimes you have to be creative. Now, don't think because an older officer gets away with it that you're going to get away with it. It's something you have to earn. You have to earn the respect of your fellow officers. You have to earn the respect of your supervisors. And just as importantly, you have to earn the respect of your inmates. Now, there's a difference between fear and respect. Inmates can fear a person, but that doesn't mean they respect them. I had bosses that I can say ran the institution by fear, but myself or none of the other supervisors or the subsequent subordinate staff respected that person. So what do I expect out of a new officer? As a fellow officer, I expect them to come in, do their job, and have my back. As a supervisor, I expect them to come in, do their job, and have each other's back, all the while letting them know that I will have their back as well. Until next time, this is Keith Helwig from Cops Corrections Videos. If you like my videos, please subscribe. Until next time, stay safe and watch your back.